on average, practices miss 42% of all incoming phone calls. Imagine a business that basically only answered the phone half the time. Welcome to another episode of the Physician Growth Accelerator, a show where we break down your private medical practice systems into vitals, give you the tools to diagnose root cause of what may be restricting your growth, and prescribe what to do about it. I'm your host, Zed Williamson, and I believe that everything you experience, everything I experience, is the perfect outcome of our current systems. So if we want to experience something different, it's up to us to tweak the system, take responsibility, and create the outcome you're looking for. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume that you might be experiencing some kind of constraint in your practice. I believe in the health of the business side of a private practice, and constraint can feel like it's hard to find good employees. Maybe it's hard to keep them. Maybe it feels like burnout, like you're doing more today than you ever done before, and you're actually making less than you ever did before. Those are signs of constraint. If that's you, go to physiciangrowthaccelerator.com and check your vitals. It'll help you identify maybe where the starting point is for you to tweak your own system. And what I want to talk about today is there's something a lot of medical practices do that would be really considered insane for almost every other business type. And that is, you likely are making it very hard for patients to see you. And there's a lot of pieces that create this outcome. But think about any other business putting barriers in front of people, being able to do business with them. It would not be looked upon as the greatest way to run the business. And that's what we do in medical practice. As an example, very few practices take true ownership of educating patients about how they should be feeling. There's a lot of patients out there that are struggling and they don't know that it doesn't have to be that way. So that's one part. When a patient tries to reach out to a practice, we know over years and years and years of research that on average, practices miss 42% of all incoming phone calls. Imagine a business that basically only answered the phone half the time. When patients try to submit information through websites or online, they rarely get response back. Many times appointments are set up far into the future, and sometimes changes happen with patients. If a patient gets into a practice, we tend to put them through a process that, we don't think about optimizing it too much. So maybe they show up for a visit, and then we send them somewhere else for some kind of scanning or diagnostic, and then we ask them to come back for a review of that diagnostic. And then maybe you're a surgical specialty and your team goes through the work to get an authorization with insurance company, but things get backed up and you don't reach out to the patient in time. And so now the window of authorization is closed and you have to start over. Think of any other industry doing that to a customer. It would not go well. And it happens, more often than not in private medical practices. And sometimes it's just because the structure of the business is set up to allow it to happen. Chances are many of the things I just mentioned are things that are happening in your practice. And you may not know exactly how often. You may not know exactly what that looks like in your practice, but you know it's there. And if you can't see it exactly, then that means you can't measure it exactly. And if you can't measure it exactly, we can't create accountability for it. So I want you to imagine one of your employees, and let's say this person, their job is to interact with patients and get them on the schedule. If nothing has ever been shared with this employee about the goal of the practice regarding how you interact with patients, if nothing's been shared with this employee about a specific standard in regards to how we get patients into the practice, then that person is going to operate from the standpoint of what is most comfortable for them. And so let's say they know a certain day of the week that you can book new patient appointments on is a day that consistently gets canceled or moved around, and that's uncomfortable for them to bring a patient in knowing that now they got to call that patient back. So they skip that day. So they push the patient out. So what they've done is they've solved an issue for them, but unknowingly to the practice, it's reduced the health of the practice. The people that are responsible for getting patients in, let's say for procedures, I use the example of prior authorizations expiring. Chances are they are doing something that serves them. Maybe they're uncomfortable trying to reach a patient, or they just think it's their job to call one time and hope the patient calls back. And then when the patient calls back too late, they go, oh, it's expired, so we have to start over. And they may even relay that message to the patient in a way that gets the patient to go, I'm good. We don't need to start over. And the reason this is important is all these steps are basically reasons that patients should trust you. And if they don't trust you, they're not going to accept treatment from you. But these little itty-bitty things, when they're hidden, it's like they're kind of below the table, so we don't know specifically how often it happens. We know it happens, but we say like, okay, it happens every once in a while, but most of the time we're pretty good. The thing is, inconsistent excellence is perceived as constantly bad. Think about that. Inconsistent excellence is perceived as constantly bad. So you imagine this patient suffering with whatever they're suffering with. They're coming into the practice not in the greatest positive state. It's a negative state. Their confirmation bias is looking all over to prove more things that are wrong than in reality. And then someone doesn't answer the phone. If they finally get through, they're on hold forever. If they finally talk to someone, it feels like they're talking to a robot. If they finally get to opportunity of an appointment, we make them jump through all these hoops, fill out this paperwork, go to this portal. The appointment's going to be in 3 weeks. And as it comes up, they get a call, oh, we had to change the schedule, so we're rescheduling you for 3 weeks later. I mean, think about that. This is all measurable. The problem is you're not measuring it. And if you don't measure it, you can't hold accountability to it. Now, there are practices out there, and I will tell you, they are creating raving fans because they love the work they're doing, because they're being held accountable to achieving specific goals. You can't have raving patients without raving employees. Your employees have got to love what they're doing. And the way that you get them to love what they're doing is to be clear and concise in regards to what they own on a day-to-day basis. And if you measure these things, the things related to a patient getting into your practice, and you keep a scorecard that people get to high-five each other about, your employees will be happier, and that will translate to excellence all the time. And it'll translate to patients absolutely be raving over your practice, which increases trust, which increases the health of your business. Sometimes it's easy to do the ostrich thing, put your head in the hole. You're busy, you're super busy, you do good work with patients, and you put yourself at risk when you do that. So I would suggest get the head out of the ostrich hole and take a look, measure, create a scorecard, hold people accountable. You can be excellent all the time. If you ever have questions on how to implement these things or want more details, please feel free to reach out to us. You can visit physiciangrowthaccelerator.com, connect with us there, and also just check your vitals to see where something might be telling you you need to tweak so that you can get a different outcome with your current system. Thanks, and we'll see you again on the Physician Growth Accelerator.